Travis Wayne Goodsell. I guess I'll do an update on Chad and Lori, the Mormon murderers of most recent history. So they had court appearances today. So just a quick summary. Chad had a near-death experience where he believed that he was told about the end of the world, and so he wrote books about it. And Lori Vallow from Arizona got in contact with him. She claimed to love his work, and they became buddies, and then they started having an affair, and then they thought about Crisscross, and a good old Alfred Hitchcock movie, North by Northwest, I believe it is. Is that Crisscross? Let me check. It's been a while since I've seen that one. Or is it Murder on a Train? Which movie does Crisscross? Okay, so it's not Crisscross. There's actually a movie called Crisscross. Strangers on a Train. That's it. That's right. Yeah, Strangers on a Train. And so as both Lori and Chad were Mormon, and the church leaves Mormons empty on all their questions that we have all through our growing up years. We have no choice but to search for the answers ourselves. And when people don't know how to properly search for truth, you get ridiculous stuff, and in this particular case it ends up in murder. Brian David Mitchell, another wonderful Mormon example. But Mormons won't claim him because, well, he was excommunicated. You know. But and so, yeah, they had evidence of them purchasing the ring and wedding dress in advance of the murder of his wife, and then they took off to Hawaii and were dragged back with the disappearance of the two kids, which I should remember to do this more often. But they were brought back to Rexburg, Idaho, the only cool Mormon spot on the face of the earth. The school no longer exists. There used to be Rick's College there. Church tore it all down, demolished it, built up another BYU on the ruins of Rick's. And so they're very likely to pursue, I think they are actually pursuing the death penalty for Chad. But Lori, as they found the kids in Rexburg. Gruesome what he did to them. But Lori was sent to a mental institution, and you need to understand psychology is a junk science. It's a pseudoscience in technical terms. It is a fraud. John Oliver's show went over police investigations. They were trained by psychologists to do all that crap. I did the video on it the very next morning. The whole field is a fraud and is the cause of much of the dichotomous contention in our country on all sorts of issues. Those are what's called fallacy arguments. They purposely use fallacious arguments, claim it's science-based, to self-fulfill prophecies of their own making. And psychologists create the box categories, then brainwash the individuals that are able to be vulnerable, and the people, the victims, end up fulfilling it. So if you've read the book Women Are From Mars, or Women Are From Venus, Men Are From Mars, or vice versa, whatever it's titled, it's all a load of crap. But if you read it and you believe it and you embrace it and you start preaching it and you start acting on it, yeah, they gotcha. You're now self-fulfilling the author of the book. 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Same thing, and he's a Mormon. It's all crap. There are some good principles in there. It's better seek first to understand before being understood, but the whole concept is a brainwashing trap to get you to conform and to comply, rather than being good people, because that's the one flaw in that whole thing. If a person refuses to work with another person for a third alternative, you're never going to have a win-win. And I can't remember if he touches on that briefly, but it's a failed concept, and it's one that he was trying to get people into self-fulfilling it. And now you see people abuse it. They say win-win when you do what I tell you to do. It's a win-win for both of us when you do what I say. Still to this day, after all these decades, people screwed it all up. But yeah, she was there she was there to see if she could be turned, if she would testify or plead guilty. And that was the only reason for it. It's a place where they send people to torture them, to get them to confess. It's bypassing the legal system, bypassing human rights, and our constitutional rights, and our legal rights, as psychologists have brainwashed our justice system. They have a whole mental health court now here in Utah. It's all fraud. They don't want to give certain people rights, and so they create that. And the vulnerable people who have already been victimized by psychologists are the most vulnerable to the denial of justice. But regardless, she was there to see if they can get her to flip on Chad or to confess. And so today was very telling. Chad, his legal counsel says, we want to go to a different venue. We want to go to this other county because we don't think we're going to have a fair trial here in this one. That is crucial to understanding what has happened to Lori while she was being psychologically tortured. She comes out and pleads not guilty. So, what the prosecution wants to have happen is for both of them to be tried together unless Lori flips and testifies against Chad. We saw this with Brian David Mitchell. Wanda Barzee, likewise, they were both sent here to be psychologically tortured and to see if they could flip, and they knew they wouldn't, but they hoped, and they were going to stay in Utah's psycho hospital down in Provo for the rest of their lives. But Mr. Smart, Brother Smart, Mormon, had ties with Senator Orrin Hatch, and Senator Orrin Hatch pulled some strings and made sure that Brian David Mitchell got reevaluated for federal charges rather than state charges. And all of a sudden, he's magically cured. He's competent now to stand trial. Totally exposed the whole psychological fraud that's going on here in Utah. And so, yeah, he's now in prison. Wanda Barzee was left inside the psycho hospital to be tortured. And by doing so, they were then able to get her to flip on Brian David Mitchell and testify against him, so that she still has to do some time, but she was released like several years ago, wasn't she? And so that's how they do things, and that's what they did to Lori. So for her to not want to be in the same thing together, that is very telling. Because if they were together, they would be a united front. Both claiming not guilty. Whereas, if she's going to testify against Chad, you don't want them together. Prosecution wants them together. But if they got Lori to flip on Chad, yeah, everything's fine dandy now. And so, this not guilty could indicate a plea deal that is in the works to testify against Chad, as Chad's lawyers did not focus on their issues with Lori, but now are saying, hey, we want to go elsewhere. We don't want to be here with Lori. So that's a good indicator that she's flipped on him or is considering flipping on him. Never trust a woman when you're a criminal. When you're a good guy, trust a woman, but she'll break your heart. Done to me multiple times. But that I hope helps you guys understand what's actually going on. She's not all of a sudden mentally competent. That's a fraud. She had made some kind of tentative agreement that if carried out, she will then change her plea and will likely see her testify against Chad in his case. So, heads up. The woman doth betray the man.